We witness the death of a senate beneath marble and silence. We witness love transformed into decree, devotion mutated into purge, affection weaponized against an empire's throat. Rome, in the year 218 Anno Domini, stands at the threshold of transformation. The Severan dynasty holds the purple, but the grip weakens. The imperial cult burns incense to living gods. The Senate, ancient and proud, watches from shadowed colonnades as divinity walks among mortal men, wearing laurel and madness in equal measure. This is the account of an emperor who married a slave woman and made her empress, who declared love sacred and aristocracy profane, who summoned the Senate to bear witness to devotion, then erased them from history with the stroke of imperial will. This is the chronicle of marble stained not with blood, but with absence, of names chiseled from stone, of power so absolute it required no explanation, only obedience unto silence. Rome trembles, the torches burn low, the incense rises. We begin. Rome, in this 3rd century after the crucified prophet whose followers still hide in catacombs, bends to a doctrine older and harsher than his gospel. The emperor is God made flesh, Pontifex Maximus, bridge between mortal dust and divine order. The imperial cult demands worship, not faith. Incense burns before statues of living men. Prayers rise to rulers who sweat, hunger, bleed, yet claim the right to command heaven and earth. This is not poetry. This is constitutional theology. The Severans, born of African dust and Syrian altars, understand what patrician Rome forgot. Power requires theater, and theater requires the sacred. A mortal ruler can be dethroned. A divine one can only be mourned. The Senate remains, an antique decoration, a relic wearing ancestral rings, pretending authority while foreign-born emperors reshape the world in their own image. But memory lingers beneath the curia's coffered ceilings. Old men whisper lineage like prayer. They remember a Rome with no emperor, when Senatus Populusque Romanus meant Senate first, people second, and the Republic was not yet a tomb. Memory is dangerous. Memory breeds conspiracy, and what breeds conspiracy must be purified. Beneath marble facades, tension coils like a legion's bowstring. Aristocrats cling to nostalgia. Emperors study omens and whisper to gods, certain Rome's greatest enemy has always been Rome itself. In the Forum, rumor is currency. Carthaginian traders barter beneath Septimius Severus's arch. Lawyers plead beneath the Basilica Julia's echoing vaults. Money changers count denarii beneath Saturn's temple, eyes sharp for imperial auditors. In the baths, steam erases rank. Senators and freedmen share water and whispers. A secret spoken in the caldarium becomes prophecy in the frigidarium. Truth mutates into rumor. Rumor calcifies into fate. At the Escaline markets, Rome sorts humanity like livestock. Germanic warriors inspected like oxen. Greek tutors reciting Homer for buyers. African children sold to destiny without mother or name. Women stand among them, bodies valued, souls discounted, futures determined by the desires of the powerful. Women like the one he will choose. Temples blaze. Omens rise with smoke beneath Capitoline skies. Household gods anxiously receive wine and whispering prayers. Rome kneels before 1,000 altars, hoping one will answer. Into this world of marble pride, volcanic resentment, and ritual obedience steps a young emperor, crowned by legions, convinced the heavens chose him. He will marry a slave, he will call it love, and Rome will kneel before that love, or Rome will burn. History preserves her poorly, not through scandal or shame, but through fear, as though parchment itself trembled to remember her. She was born into the quiet slavery of domestic lineage, a grandmother who served, a mother who served, daughters destined to serve until generosity or death intervened. She moved through marble corridors long before anyone imagined she might command them. Perhaps she carried water to the imperial baths, copper vessel pressed into her hip. Perhaps she arranged flowers in the triclinium, hands choosing lilies and roses unseen by those who feasted. Perhaps she mended garments by lamplight while Rome slept. Time effaces details, but not essence. She possessed beauty, not the kind that demands, but the kind that endures, and more dangerous still, dignity. A posture that suggested she existed, not merely functioned. The emperor noticed. He saw her pour wine at imperial dinners, movements precise and silent. He saw her pass through colonnades at dawn, when only servants stirred the palace into life. He saw in her not ornament, but presence. Roman law made such matters simple. A slave woman could be taken, no ceremony, no consequence. Emperors kept harems of bodies that belonged to the state as surely as aqueducts or grain reserves. But he did not want a concubine. He wanted a queen. He wanted legitimacy, devotion, the coronation of desire. He wanted her beside him as Augusta, mother of Rome's future. In the slaves' quarters, she woke from dreams of fields she had never touched and of freedom she could not imagine. Whispers surrounded her, envy, pity, fatalism. She felt his gaze like distant heat, not yet threat, but gravity. A future pulling her forward without consent. His advisors recoiled, the Praetorian prefect warned in private. Priests murmured of cosmic order. Freedmen who had climbed from slavery themselves begged caution, suddenly defenders of hierarchy. The Senate received rumor like poison. To wed a slave was not scandal, it was sacrilege. How could divinity mingle with purchased flesh? If an emperor could erase the line between slave and noble, what boundary remained sacred? Among them, Marcus Aurelius Corvinus, last echo of a name once imperial, listened in grave silence. He knew truth's first casualty under divine rule was speech. He had seen faces chiseled from statues. He would not join them. The emperor proclaimed the union ordained by Jupiter. Omens aligned, or were made to. A sacrificial liver read as favorable. Chaldean astrologers charted a destined marriage. The Sibylline books produced a verse of union between highest and lowest. Power always finds prophets. He freed her first, a decree, wax cooling like fate. You belong to yourself, the magistrate said. Yet freedom granted by a master is just another leash. Then the marriage. Temple of Jupiter. Torchlight thick with smoke, gold statue staring down in indifferent eternity. She wore white, veil trembling, hands raw from pumice, labor scrubbed from skin but not from soul. The vows were ancient, her voice barely breath. When the veil lifted, she saw senators, generals, priests, every face carved in horror disguised as reverence. She had not risen. She had been weaponized. A symbol, a monument, proof that he could rewrite reality. Rome whispered. The Senate brooded beneath silk and stone. And the emperor smiled, not with love alone nor madness alone, but with the terrible knowledge that affection, when wielded by a god-king, becomes punishment. Rome's patrician houses traced their blood to gods and heroes. Their names carved in marble, whispered in funerary rites like scripture. They married among themselves, as though divinity were hereditary, and prestige a substance passed from father to son like silver. A slave empress shattered that illusion. In the forum, senators froze mid-conversation when her litter passed. The curtains remained drawn, still her presence pressed upon them like storm air. She wore purple. She sat beside the emperor on the dais. Her profile appeared in silver across the provinces. The word Augusta gleaming beneath a face born to bondage. Coins once bearing Venus and Juno now carried her image, and merchants held them like omens, as though divinity and servitude could not safely share the same metal. In the baths, men whispered behind steam. Rome had entered an age where hierarchy bled into dust, where a slave's visage purchased bread and blessed oil. At state banquets, senators reclined beneath lamplight, offering gifts and false devotion while venom gathered behind polished eyes. Corvinus attended one such feast. Torchbearers lined the palace corridors, incense thickened the air. Silence hovered, not reverent but calculated, the hush of men weighing each word against survival. The triclinium glittered like a shrine. The emperor and empress reclined at the honor couch, surrounded by Rome's power arranged in descending order like constellations fixed by fate. She wore imperial purple, her hair an altar of pearls and emeralds. She looked composed, but Corvinus had spent a lifetime reading faces. He saw the fear behind serenity, the way her eyes traced every movement, listening for contempt hidden beneath courtesy. She did not eat. Her hands remained perfectly still. A woman freed, crowned and yet held by chains no decree could sever. The emperor spoke endlessly, omens, victories, destiny. When his hand brushed hers, it was not affection, it was declaration, ownership gilded as tenderness. Corvinus drank what etiquette demanded and knew, with the certainty of an old soldier, that this path led only to slaughter. Not because the emperor was mad. Madness was Rome's native crown. But because this ruler required devotion so absolute that even a patrician's pride became treason. And the aristocracy would never yield that last territory, not to a soldier emperor, and certainly not to a slave empress. In marble atriums, beneath ancestral masks, senators spoke plainly. This was pollution, a cosmic insult, a test designed to break them or expose them. Letters traveled in coded hands. Whispers moved through baths and villas. Loyalty bent, but did not break. And the emperor knew. Palace walls listened. Freedmen served as ears. Slaves carried secrets like water. Letters arrived opened yet resealed in perfect wax. One evening, a palace freedman visited Corvinus. "The emperor trusts your loyalty," he said with the serene cruelty only the recently freed truly learn. "He hopes it will remain, for Rome's sake, for your family's sake." Threat delivered. History pivoted. Corvinus bowed his head, not in submission to the freedman, but to inevitability. That night, he lit incense to his household gods, praying not for triumph, but for a way to live without betraying Rome or himself. Days passed. The emperor did not strike. He waited, serene, patient, attending Senate sessions, performing rites beside his crowned bride, as if daring Jupiter himself to object. He was not hungry for blood. He was hungry for ritual, for the moment when vengeance could masquerade as divine justice. He would not punish rebellion, he would sanctify its extinction. And Rome felt the stillness before thunder. Rome kept time by ritual, every month sanctified, every festival an act of state. And the priest-emperor observed them all with obsessive devotion, as though piety itself were a weapon. At Lupercalia he stood robed in purple, while naked youths ran through the streets striking women with goatskin for fertility. At Saturnalia, when slaves dined and masters served, he declared the inversion temporary, a game, while his marriage remained permanent cosmic law. Omens were studied like legislation. Augurs traced the sky in sacred geometry. Haruspices handled entrails with surgeon precision. Livers, intestines, bird flight, all called to bear witness to imperial desire. Eastern worship bled into Roman rites, Syrian sun prayers, Chaldean astrologers with bronze instruments and whispered Greek charts. They proclaimed the marriage written in stars older than Rome herself. Even fire bowed at his demand, or was meant to. The temple of Vesta glowed like eternity. The sacred flame had burned since kings ruled the hills. The Vestals, pale and severe, had preserved Rome longer than any emperor ever would. He arrived with his crowned bride, He demanded the flame honor her name. The chief Vestal, robed in white, face carved by 40 years of duty, answered without inflection. The fire burns as it always has. It will burn forever under our divine protection, he replied. The gods are eternal. Emperors are mortal. The fire outlasts both. The Empress stood still, breath shallow. The temple felt colder than marble had any right to be. The Emperor's smile was priestly and lethal. Burn incense for the Augusta. We pray for Rome, for the Senate and people, for the Emperor chosen by the gods, and for the Empress elevated by them. A bow. Neither loyalty nor rebellion, a sacred refusal disguised as obedience. As they left, the flame crackled, unchanged, unbent, unconquered. In torchlit corridors, she whispered. She did not obey. He stopped. His tenderness was horror. Nothing is sacred but what I declare sacred. No one untouchable but by my mercy. Not Vestals, not Senate, not even you. Fear settled in her bones like winter. At night she woke without memory, only terror. Love and imprisonment braided so tightly she could no longer tell where one ended and the other began. An old servant brought warm milk and honey. A dream, Augusta? No dream, only dread. The servant's voice trembled. Strange birds fly backward. They land on funeral pyres. The gods are displeased. Should I tell him? A pause, a whisper. He already knows, and he does not fear gods. Her cup shook in her hand. The milk trembled like prophecy. His madness did not resemble Nero's spectacle or Caligula's frenzy. It was colder, mathematical, a sanctified delirium that called itself reason. He demanded oaths, not to Rome, not to empire, but to the marriage itself. Senators bowed not to Caesar as ruler, but to Caesar as prophet of a new cosmic order. Every hesitation recorded, every pause immortalized in wax tablets by silent freedmen seated like scribes of judgment. Edicts followed. Slaves of imperial service could receive not only freedom, but citizenship. A proclamation as gentle as mercy and as violent as a blade pressed beneath the ribs of aristocracy. If a slave could ascend to divinity, then what meaning remained in blood? The Senate trembled. One morning in the Curia, a senator too old for caution rose. Ceremony dripped from his tongue like honey laced with poison. Divine Caesar, we honor the Augusta. Yet for Rome's stability, perhaps. He hesitated only once. A second marriage? For heirs of patrician blood, while love remains sacred in your first union? Silence, the kind that freezes time. The emperor stood, every movement deliberate, as though liturgy animated his limbs. You speak of legitimacy? Only Rome's future. Rome's future is mine to ordain. He descended from the dais, placed a hand on the man's shoulder, tender as an executioner studying the neck before the stroke. Thank you for your counsel. It will be remembered. 3 days later, the Tiber delivered the senator's body back to Rome like a sacrificial offering. No protests. Gratitude performed. Terror swallowed. Cracks splintered the marble world of patrician pride. Whispers thickened like incense. Letters coded, burned, rewritten. Men who once commanded legions now knelt in their own homes, praying for survival. Corvinus retreated to his villa, feigning illness, tending grapes as though earth could shelter him from heaven's wrath. But imperial power traveled on every road. Silence was not refuge, only delay. The court transformed into temple. Petitions delivered on knees, robes kissed like relics. Morning audiences became liturgies. The emperor, high priest of his own divinity. The empress seated beside him, revered, worshipped, hollow. She felt herself dissolving into symbol. A crown is a cage, and hers was forged of love sharpened into doctrine. At night she asked softly, "Do you love me?" You know I do. Then why force worship? Why not simply rule? His touch came gentle, terrifying in its tenderness. Because love without power is sentiment. Power without love is tyranny. But love proven by absolute power, that is godhood. I am not divine. You are what I declare, therefore you are. Her breath trembled. He mistook it for awe. She knew it was suffocation. Once she had carried water, now she carried doctrine. And in his eyes, she was not wife nor woman nor soul, only proof that gods walk in flesh, and flesh must kneel. Prayers do not move gods. Gods do not listen, they only receive surrender. And she realized she had married one, or worse, helped create one. Spring arrived wrong, cold, hostile. Hail hammered the forum, cracked roof tiles, killed birds mid-flight. Frost burned the vineyards, grain withered before it sprouted. Rome awoke each morning beneath a sky that felt offended. The augurs declared the omens grave. Haruspices carved open cattle with trembling hands, livers mottled like rot, intestines knotted in patterns ancient texts named warnings. Warnings meant for whom? The emperor saw only affirmation. The gods raged not at him, but at Rome's refusal to kneel. If the old order resisted heaven, then heaven demanded purification. Astrologers unfurled charts across marble. Bronze instruments tapped constellations like verdicts. Mars aligned with Saturn, conflict ordained, purification inevitable. The stars command action, they whispered. Those who resist divine rebirth must be removed, lest corruption spread. He fasted 3 days, drank only water and thin wine, knelt before altars alone, speaking to gods he believed answered directly. The Empress watched, terrified, not for Rome, for him. He was leaving the realm of men, crossing into that terrible place where power ceases to need reason. She pleaded with priests, advisors, generals, temper him, remind him men are not clay. They bowed, promised counsel, offered nothing. Counsel was treason now, restraint was blasphemy. Every silence in Rome trembled with self-preservation. Senators feigned illness, sent distant heirs to warm marble seats in their place. The empire still performed loyalty, like a corpse posed in noble clothing, and Corvinus remained, too old to flee, too proud to pretend. He watched the emperor ascend, not in power, but in delusion. He spoke now in divine plural. We decree. We who embody heaven's will. Corvinus closed his eyes. He remembered the Senate as it once breathed. Real debate, real danger, real consequence. A world before divinity devoured legitimacy. When he opened them, the emperor's gaze was upon him. Not wrath. Worse. Pity. The pity of a god for a man already written out of creation. That look sealed his fate. He had not conspired, he had not spoken. He had only remembered Rome as it was, and memory itself had become treason. Strangely, relief came, an old soldier's mercy, the knowledge that his watch would soon end, and he would not be forced to witness the final desecration of a world built across 8 centuries, a world now awaiting sacrifice. The decree arrived on wax, stamped with imperial divinity. The Senate would convene at dawn. Not invited, summoned. Attendance commanded. Absence equals guilt. Memory equals sentence. Every ancient name was listed. Every patrician bloodline called to kneel. Corvinus received his tablet in the vineyard he tended like a relic of calmer ages. He broke the seal and felt not fear, only exhaustion older than his bones. His wife watched him don the toga and ring passed down through centuries. She whispered, "You could claim illness," and bleed quietly in bed, wondering if I damned others by absence. No, I will sit where Rome once breathed. Honor as final possession, dignity as last currency, All roads brought senators back like veins to a failing heart. Homes whispered farewells. Children sent away. Documents hidden. Quiet prayers traded like secret currency. The forum stood still at dawn. No merchants, no lawyers. Only soldiers, spears vertical, eyes forward, silence sharpened like steel. The Curia Julia waited in funereal brilliance. Incense suffocated marble air. Eastern perfumes drowned Roman olive and stone. Guards stood like statues of vengeance. Senators arranged their togas with trembling dignity, each fold a prayer, each drape a memory. Corvinus sat in his family's ancestral seat, a monument breathing. Whispers fluttered. Would they bow, prostrate, renounce blood for theology? The doors opened. He entered. Purple so deep it devoured torchlight. Gold like lightning across his chest, a crown that blurred mortal into icon. Beside him, the Empress. Veiled, white as sacrificial lamb, purple trim like a wound. She walked as if carved from marble, as if she had already left her body behind. They ascended the platform where Cicero once thundered and Cato once warned. Now heaven's self-appointed mouthpiece stood to rewrite destiny. The emperor raised a hand. Silence obeyed like a trained creature. He spoke, not of war or law, but of love as divine law, of transformation as cosmic decree, of lineage as lie. His voice, soft, merciless, a priest officiating the funeral of a world. Those who understood divine revelation, blessed. Those who clung to birth and marble memory, diseased. Rome must purge impurity, not punishment, purification. He spoke for nearly an hour. No fury, no wrath, only certainty, the most lethal force in empire. Words stacked like stones for execution, a sermon building toward sacrifice. The Senate did not move, some in awe, most in paralysis, all suffocating beneath incense and inevitability. Corvinus listened and knew. This was judgment, their presence admission, their existence crime. Then the emperor paused. Stillness filled the chamber like rising water. He lifted a hand to the guards. The doors closed. Stone meeting stone like tomb sealing bone. A sound that ended a world. What followed was not massacre. It was ritual. The emperor descended. Guards parted like priests of steel. The Empress remained above, fingers white around her throne, a statue who could still feel pain. Names were called. One by one, senators approached. Not adversaries, but penitents. The first, a young man, grandson of a consul. You left the wedding before the final blessing. My wife was ill. Excuses are blasphemy. A gesture. Guards guided him, gently, politely, through a hidden door. It closed like a tomb seal. The next, and the next, and the next. Hesitation became treason. A glance, a murmur, a breath too slow, heresy. No blood, no screams, only erasure in soft sandals and quiet doors. Then Corvinus. He stood without trembling. Your family served Rome for centuries. Before empire, when the Senate still ruled. Memory becomes rebellion when it resists divine will. Then punish me for remembering. Not punishment, purification. He bowed, not to Caesar but to history. Walked into shadow without escort, turned once. Remember. He disappeared. Rome exhaled like a dying god. The Empress wept behind her veil, not loudly, tears like confession. No one listened. Hours passed. The Senate thinned. 2/3 vanished into shadow. Those who knelt survived. Not blessed, spared, not loyal, afraid. They whispered sacred words with voices hollow as tomb air, purity, devotion, divine order. The emperor lifted his hands. Rome is cleansed. A choir of broken men prostrated. Voices blended until individuality dissolved into submission. He offered his hand to the Empress. She rose like someone being lifted from a grave, not elevated to glory. They departed in majesty. Survivors knelt until the last fold of purple vanished. Then they rose, slow, stunned, diminished. Not speaking, not human, instruments, relics of power they no longer possessed. Behind them, slaves entered with chisels. Names disappeared from stone. Statues fell without sound. Damnatio memoriae. Death was mercy. This was obliteration. Senators walked into copper light, carrying bodies intact and souls cracked. Wives waited. Children hid. No one spoke. Rome continued. But Rome was changed. Those who lived had not survived by loyalty or virtue, but by art. The art of kneeling, the art of worshipping fear, the art of erasing themselves. They walked home not as rulers, but as witnesses to their own extinction. The executions left no spectacle, no arena, no crowds cheering vengeance, only quiet disappearance. Some whispered poison and warm baths, philosophers quoting Seneca, as veins opened into peace. Others spoke of darkness, strangulation beneath palace stones, bodies sinking into the Tiber under moonless skies. No truth survived, only absence. Names vanished from bronze tablets, tombs scraped bare. Inscriptions polished smooth until even memory became dust. Rome's bureaucratic genius, which once ruled continents, now governed oblivion with equal mastery. Corvinus became unmade, his estates seized, his slaves scattered, his library burned. His wife died soon after, not killed, simply hollowed until her body followed her grief. Her inscription bore no husband's name. She became widow to a shadow. Children fled, changed names, erased lineage to survive. A dynasty dissolved without war, without plague, only decree. Across Rome, ancestral homes darkened, wax masks veiled. Lineages ended not by sword but by silence. Yet Rome continued. Grain still arrived, markets opened, aqueducts flowed, indifferent to erased bloodlines. But the Forum felt lighter, not purified, but emptied. Where memory once anchored power, new inscriptions praised transformation, divine renewal, heavenly will. The Senate returned, half-bodied and half-souled. New men filled ancient benches, freedmen's sons, merchants, military climbers tethered to imperial breath, not ancestral pride. Government became liturgy, policy became worship, obedience became sacrament. Old families hid behind villa walls, honoring gods in whispers. They draped ancestor masks in black, mourning those they could never name. To grieve aloud would resurrect the condemned and join them. The Empress moved through the palace like a consecrated ghost. Crowned in gold, carved in sorrow, she did not seek rule, only breath, only self. Yet she had become symbol, not woman, instrument, not beloved, proof that divine will could break any stone, any name, any world. She had risen beyond slavery, only to find herself owned by something more consuming than any master. In the quiet hours before dawn, she saw slaves carrying water, arranging flowers, the life she once lived. They prostrated themselves, foreheads to marble, terrified of divinity clothed in silks and jewels. She longed to whisper, "Rise, I was you." But words would wound more than comfort. Mercy, spoken from a throne, becomes cruelty. So she walked past them in silence. Tears fell, jeweled and hopeless. They did not lift their heads until she was gone. They did not speak of the tears. They pretended they had seen nothing. In Rome that morning, everyone pretended. And that, more than blood or decree, marked the death of the old world. Power of this kind is a closed circle, and circles, once sealed, begin to devour themselves. Having purified the Senate, the emperor turned outward. Governors appointed by tradition were replaced by favorites. Laws older than empire were rewritten in afternoons. Tax systems tuned over centuries were shattered to reward devotion, not competence. Frontiers felt the tremor first. Along the Rhine, Germanic tribes sensed weakness. Fortresses undermanned, supplies delayed, commanders chosen not for skill, but for having bowed beautifully in marble halls. Britain choked under arbitrary edicts. Public works died, roads cracked, civilization frayed at the edges like worn tapestry. In the East, where gods multiplied with each market and shrine, imperial adoption of Syrian rites twisted ritual into confusion. Which prayers had meaning? Which gods ruled today? Answers shifted with the emperor's visions. The Praetorian Guard watched. Professionals, their loyalty practical, not metaphysical. Empires may run on myths, but soldiers run on pay. And pay depends on taxes. Taxes depend on order. Order was dying. Whispers grew in steam-filled baths and lamplit barracks. Not treason yet, only arithmetic. If Rome collapsed, so did their privileges. Divinity, whatever its splendor, could not feed legions. On the Rhine, General Gallus received his dismissal. A lifetime soldier replaced by a financier's son who had once rescued the emperor's purse, not his army. Gallus read the decree, then read the world, and the world spoke plainly. Within days, 3 legions hailed him emperor, not with trumpets, with necessity. Rome heard first through courier breath and foaming horse. Rebellion, legions moving, frontier shifting. The emperor listened in ceremonial calm, seated in gold and purple, Empress beside him in white like a living votive candle. "The gods have sent a trial," he said, "a sieve to separate the pure from the polluted." Advisors nodded. No one spoke strategy. To propose action was to imply danger, and danger implied the emperor was mortal. So silence protected them and doomed the state. The Empress knew before the messenger's breath settled. This was the end. Not rumor, not prophecy, fact. Reality would crush theology. Steel would silence incense. Rome would survive. Her husband would not. Relief touched her first, sharp, shocking. Freedom glimmered through fear like dawn through smoke. That night she tried one final time to reach the man she married. Gallus commands the frontier. The West will follow. We must act. He held her face with reverent calm. Jupiter does not abandon those chosen by heaven. Her voice trembled, soft, human. Maybe Jupiter never chose. Maybe we chose and called it fate. His fingers tightened, gentle as ever, terrifying as the hand of a statue given breath. To doubt divine will is to deny reality. I cannot fail. The alternative does not exist. There it was, the final truth. She was not married to a ruler, nor even to a tyrant, but to a mind sealed inside itself so perfectly that the world could not enter. Certainty had become his throne, and certainty, she now knew, is the most lethal madness. News arrived in fragments, as collapses always do. Couriers speaking in euphemisms, senatorial letters coded in phrases older than empire. But beneath every polite word lay truth gathering like floodwater behind failing stone. Gallus held the Rhine. His legions marched not as rebels but as restorers, declaring they came to save Rome from divine delusion and restore the order that had carried empire across centuries. Governors in Gaul announced support. Not out of loyalty to Gallus but exhaustion with chaos. Hispanian legions declared neutrality. Danube legions watched, waiting, calculating. Rome inhaled hesitation. The forum hushed. Merchants weighed silence like currency. Lawyers postponed cases. Citizens moved as if sound itself might provoke catastrophe. Praetorians patrolled fully armed, not hostile, simply present, steel reminding Rome where power truly lived. The emperor answered rebellion with incense and prophecy. dreams of Jupiter. Omens proclaimed as affirmation. Sacrifices multiplied across temples like fever rituals to a silent sky. Priests complied because survival demanded belief, not truth. In private, truth whispered. "I see livers, not gods," murmured the chief augur. "But we tell him what keeps us breathing." The Empress stood beside her husband through every ritual, not worshipping, not resisting, enduring. Night became her only honest hour. She listened to Rome breathe in the darkness, memorizing the city she knew she would not die within. Love had given her elevation. Elevation had made her mirror. Now the mirror waited to be shattered. A familiar voice entered her chamber one night. The old servant who remembered her as a girl carrying water, not crowns. "Augusta," she whispered, "the Praetorians speak with Gallus's men. Terms of surrender. For whom? For the Emperor. For all that this has become. They will offer peace. And if he refuses, they have other options." "So it ends," the Empress breathed, not in fear, in acceptance so deep it resembled peace. "You could flee," the old woman urged. "You once knew how to make yourself invisible." "That woman is gone," the Empress replied, "and symbols do not hide." "Then prepare," the servant whispered. "You will not survive his certainty." At dawn, the Praetorian prefect stood before the imperial throne. "Gallus marches with 4 legions," he said. "Others will join. Abdicate, Caesar. Retire. Live." "There is no rebellion," the emperor replied. "Only trial. Jupiter will crush doubt. Even gods retreat when necessary. You question heaven? I measure swords." The emperor smiled, the same gentle expression that had preceded the Senate's erasure. "Your counsel is noted." The prefect bowed. He had spoken his last, useful words. That night, the Praetorian officers convened. No scrolls, no signatures, just soldiers performing the math of survival. Their oath was to Rome, not to a man who mistook his desire for divine decree. They would offer abdication once. And when he refused as he must, they would act quietly, cleanly, without spectacle, not vengeance, correction. Rome would endure, because Rome always endured. Generals rose, emperors fell, gods changed names. But the city, the idea, the marble heartbeat of empire, it survived its worshippers and its tyrants alike. And now, once again, Rome braced to outlive a god. Word reached him quietly, like all truths in dying empires. Freedmen who owed him everything whispered warnings. Slaves sensed the shift in air and passed it along through glances and gestures. He did not rage. He dressed in imperial purple, set the diadem on his brow, and summoned her. He stood at the window overlooking Rome, temples glowing in lamplight, the forum breathing centuries, marble and shadow holding history like lungs hold breath. "They come for me," he said. "I know. You knew before I did. Servants hear everything." He turned. In the lamplight, divine certainty flickered into something almost human. "Did you love me?" "I don't know. Love requires equality. You were emperor, I was slave. We never stood in a place where love could be measured." "I loved you," he said softly. "Before crowns, before omens. When you arranged flowers and I saw something untouched by power. Then why turn love into decree? Because I could not simply love. I was emperor. What I loved, Rome had to worship or deny my divinity entirely. So I proved it." His voice broke, not in emotion but in exhausted theology. "They were the world that said you and I could not exist. So I ended that world." She saw him then fully. Not monster, not god, but man who mistook yearning for mandate and made a palace out of obsession. "You tried to make love immortal," she whispered. "Power killed it." They shared wine in silence. The city breathed, eternal and indifferent. At dawn, iron footsteps approached. The Praetorians entered without spectacle. The prefect bowed. "Caesar, abdicate, live." "Gods do not abdicate. Then you choose death." "I choose coherence." He did not tremble, the serenity of those who die inside their own certainty. The prefect turned to her. "Augusta, step aside. You are spared." She looked at her husband, not in love, not in hatred, simply the recognition of two souls who had reached the end of a myth they birthed together. "I want to live," she said. He smiled, not wounded, not betrayed, proud almost. "Go, remember." She left quietly. A woman again, not slave, not Augusta, something stranger, witness. Behind her, death came quickly, professionally, like Rome always killed when Rome wanted to endure. They declared he died peacefully in sleep. Rome sighed relief through marble teeth. Gallus entered to applause that sounded too smooth, too practiced. The Senate bowed again. Names changed, choreography remained. Statues smashed, decrees erased, his existence unmade by the same machinery he once commanded. She received a villa, a garden, silence. She tended roses, read, learned peace like relearning breath. Visitors asked. She never answered, not out of fear, out of tired truth. She died old, beneath her roses. Her marker bore nothing. No name, no years, no title. Only a stone over earth that once held a woman who briefly became a myth and lived long enough to regret it. Rome continued, as it always had, as it always would until barbarians finally breached walls that had stood for centuries, and even then, truly forever, because Rome was never merely city, but idea, and ideas survived the collapse of marble. Gallus restored the Senate, recalled some exiled families, though many lines had been permanently extinguished, returned confiscated estates where legitimate heirs could be identified, spoke of tradition and order and the proper relationship between divine authority and human governance. The names of the executed senators were not restored. Damnatio memoriae, once enacted, remained permanent. To acknowledge their erasure would be to admit the erasure, and admitting it would give it power, and power would demand reckoning Rome was too exhausted to provide. So they remained ghosts, present only in their absence, remembered only through silence that grew deeper with each passing year, until even that silence was forgotten. The emperor who married the slave woman was recorded in histories as mad tyrant, divine pretender, cautionary tale about the dangers of absolute power, untethered from aristocratic council or military reality. His love for the Empress, if it had been love, vanished into the same historical haze that obscured her name, her origin, her face. Some chronicles mentioned the marriage in passing, others omitted it entirely. Within 2 generations, uncertainty existed about whether the episode had occurred at all or was later invention, moral fable about hubris dressed in historical costume. What remained was the lesson Rome needed, that divinity requires distance, that power must be shared however unwillingly, that even emperors exist within boundaries they did not create and cannot fully destroy. But beneath the lesson lived darker truth. The emperor had not been unique, had not introduced cruelty or purge or the weaponization of love against political opposition. He had simply perfected what Rome had always practiced, the transformation of personal will into cosmic mandate, of human ambition into divine decree, of the utterly contingent into the seemingly inevitable. Every emperor claimed divine sanction. Every purge was justified as purification. Every massacre dressed itself in ritual purity and religious necessity. The slave empress was simply convenient symbol. The Senate's execution was simply expected escalation. The entire catastrophe was simply Rome being Rome, taken to logical conclusion without the usual pretense of restraint or republican nostalgia. Power does not corrupt. Power reveals. It strips away the thin membrane of civilization and exposes what has always lived beneath. The willingness to call domination love, violence order, erasure justice. The emperor loved the empress, genuinely perhaps, as genuinely as absolute power permits. But love in the mouth of emperors becomes command. Affection becomes decree. Private feeling becomes public theology that requires submission, worship, the erasure of anyone who cannot bend far enough to acknowledge that slave can become empress because emperor declares it so. Rome taught this lesson in marble and blood, an imperial decree. We, who inherit Rome's language and laws and legends, pretend we have learned it. But empires still rise. Rulers still claim divine mandate. Love still becomes weapon. Power still calls itself sacred. And senates still fall in silence, names chiseled from stone, memories condemned, while history records it all and teaches nothing. The Curia Julia stands even now, centuries beyond this chronicle. Tourists walk through its marble spaces, photographing columns, admiring architecture, reading plaques that explain Senate procedures and Republican history. None mention the day 2/3 of the Senate was purged for insufficient worship of an emperor's marriage to a slave woman. That story was erased too completely, removed from the continuous narrative, made too dangerous to remember. Only fragments survive. Contradictory accounts, uncertain dates, names that might be inventions. Historians argue about whether the episode occurred in 218 AD or another year, whether the emperor was Severan or later dynasty, whether the details are historical or legendary. This uncertainty is itself evidence of how thoroughly Rome could erase what it wished forgotten, of how completely power could rewrite past to serve present necessity. The marble remembers only what we choose to carve upon it, and we choose always to carve victory and divinity and justice, never the screaming, never the silence, never the quiet terror of a woman who was slave, then empress, then nothing, watching an empire burn in the name of love she neither requested nor could refuse, never the empty seats in the Senate, never the chiseled names, never the families who learned to forget their own ancestors, lest remembering invite the same oblivion. Never the truth that love, when spoken by power, becomes indistinguishable from threat. That elevation can be prison. That being chosen by divinity means being used by it utterly until usefulness ends. This was Rome, 218 Anno Domini. This was real. This remains, not in chronicles or monuments or public memory, but in the pattern. The eternal pattern that repeats whenever power claims divinity, whenever love becomes mandate, whenever someone stands elevated and alone, transformed into symbol against their will, watching those who question divine right disappear into night that leaves no evidence beyond absence. The Empress lived and died. Her name was spoken once, briefly, then never again. But somewhere in gardens outside Rome, roses still grow. Planted by hands that once arranged flowers for imperial household, that once wore rings of state, that once trembled while signing decrees that killed men for insufficient worship of her elevation. Roses that bloom each spring, indifferent to history, to empire, to the woman who planted them, seeking some small piece of authentic beauty in a life that had been entirely performance, entirely symbol, entirely weapon in hands that claimed to offer love. The roses remember nothing, and in their forgetting, they are wiser than all Rome's marble monuments, all its historical chronicles, all its claims to eternal glory. They simply bloom and die and bloom again. As Rome continues, as it always has, as it always will, forgetting everything essential, remembering only the beautiful lies that make continuation possible. This was real. This remains. This is Rome,